I love caramel, and caramel desserts are some of my favorites, including the French apple tarte tatin. Now this is an apple pie, essentially baked upside down. A layer of caramel, apples, and puff pastry on top, and you serve it inverted to showcase all that gorgeous caramel. So I'm getting started by getting my apples ready. You may need anywhere from 5 to 8 apples to fit a 9-inch pan. Now for those caramel apples I made, I used just an eating apple, like a Royal Gala. But since this tart is like an apple pie, you want to use a good, firm cooking apple. That way the apples hold their shape. So here I'm using Honeycrisp. I've peeled them, cored them, and also cut them in half. The next step is to dress the apples a little bit. So I've melted off 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm just gonna pour that over top. And then 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I'll just give these a quick toss. It's really just to coat the apples with the butter and sugar to promote even caramelization around the whole apple, not just at the bottom when they're cooking. For this recipe, you want to pick a pan that can go on the stove and in the oven. This pan is actually designed for tarte tatin, but you could use a skillet or any other oven-proof pan. To the pan, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of butter and 1/2 cup of sugar. So it really is a different style of caramel. It's the combination of the butter and sugar caramelizing together. But caramel rules still apply here. A little bit of acidity will help keep that sugar in its fluid state. And I'm really just looking for about a tablespoon of lemon juice. Now I'll heat this on medium-high heat. And because I have the butter in with the sugar, you can give it a bit of a stir. At this point, I'm not trying to caramelize the sugar. I just want the combination of the sugar and butter to start bubbling. Now that it's started bubbling, I can add the apples. And you want to arrange the apples as closely together as you can. All right, I give the pan a little shake just to let the apples find where they belong. And then now I'm just waiting to see a little more bubble action in between the apples. And then it's ready for the oven. There we go, we have a nice even bubbling. I'll put this on a baking tray to catch any excess drips. And now what I'd like to do is bake just the apples with the sugar and butter for 15 minutes in a 375 oven. That allows the apples to soften and also excess liquid to evaporate a little bit. This will ensure that my puff pastry crust will stay crisp when it's time to put it on. There we go. It's amazing how the apples have changed after 15 minutes. They've settled in, and you can see the beginnings of the caramelization underneath. So now is a perfect time to top the apples with the pastry. I have a sheet of puff pastry that's rolled to just about a 1/4 inch thick. So if you purchase it and it's a little thicker, you can always roll it out a little bit. And then a fluted tart pan makes a perfect tool to cut a fluted edge to your puff pastry. There we go. And then I do find to fit my pan, I need to roll it out just a little bit further. Now, the final step before it goes onto the apples is to use a fork to dock the pastry. This goes onto the apples, and then just like it's bedtime, you want to tuck them in a little bit. This way, when you invert the tart, that crust will hold in all the juices. And now the tart's ready to go back in the oven. It's still at 375 and it takes 30 to 35 minutes. So in total, the apple tart's in the oven for about 45 minutes. It's all about the browning of the puff pastry. When it's a rich golden brown, then it's time to take it out. Oh, look at that brown puff pastry. This is why tarte tatin is my favorite apple tart. I'll set this aside. Now, the tart I pulled out of the oven is too hot to turn over right now. So I have one that I've already baked off and let cool 30 minutes. That's the ideal time to let your tarte tatin cool before you invert it. It allows the caramel to thicken up and absorb into the apples a little bit, and you will find it's easier to flip out onto the plate. So what I do is just run a knife around the inside edge of the pan, just in case a little bit of apple or pastry stuck. There we go. And then place your plate. And I do like a plate with a bit of a lip to catch some of those caramel juices. And this is it. The drum roll, please. Look at that gorgeous apple tart. As a pastry chef, a tart like this gives you such a sense of accomplishment. This tart's ready to be served beautifully warm, or you can let it cool to room temperature.